Welcome everyone, as we're sponsored by the Fisher family, Nishmas Basi Bas Rabbi, Shlom ben Avram Alevi, Perl Bas Ruvain. We learn Nishmas Dov ben Chaim, Lefu Shalem, Fel Yomis ben Chayesar, Yaakov ben Basi Aleya, for the schus of Avram and Yom ben Shmamak Yudis and family, by Yo Klugman and family, Lefu Shalem for Avigdoraya ben Rivka, and my Shver gets a very big mazel tov. He's marrying off a grandson tonight, and he will be able to go to the chasana, so it's a very big simcha. Hinda bas Chayesara, Yitzhak ben Sim ben Dusha, Rivka bas Shira Leah, Chana bas Shashabina, Meshemeh ben Esther Fadel, Yochai ben Ruchama, Meir ben Chayesara, Chana bas Shashabina, Aaron ben Sarah, Nachman Yaakov ben Sarah, Dov ben Peril, Zev ben Chayetel, Shanav Refu Shalema b'Sech Shechel Yisrael. Now, things start getting tricky over here. We're in the fifth Mishna in the seventh parak. You see, if let's say Yaakov has an ancestral field, and Yossi buys it from him, so obviously Yossi only it's not a purchase. It's really a lease, because Yossi only has it until Yovel, when it returns back to Yaakov. So therefore, if Yossi is makdish it, so if he's makdish it doesn't go at Yovel to the Kahanim, because ein other makdish davar she'eino shaloi. He can't be makdish something that's not his, that it should be relinquished to the Kahanim. He only has it until the Yovel. So there, if he's makdish it, so at Yovel it goes back to Yaakov. It gets a little bit tricky, however, if let's say you have Avram and Yitzchak. What happens here is, if let's say Yitzchak buys a field from his father, and then he dedicates it, and then his father dies. So if his father died before he dedicated it, so then it's his ancestral field, right? Because if he bought the field from his father, and if his father died, so it becomes his field. And then if he dedicates it, then it goes to the Kahanim at Yovel. But let's say he bought it from his father, he dedicated it, and then his father died. So l'chayra, in this case, it should come back to him at Yovel, because at the time that he dedicated it, it wasn't his ancestral field, right? It was a stay mikna. On this, there's an interesting machlokes because of a drasha from a pasuk. So let's see the Mishnah inside. Halikeach sadam yaviv. If Yitzchak buys a field from his father, meis aviv, if his father dies, v'acha kach ikdisha, and then he's makdish it. Oh, so when he was makdish it was already his ancestral field, because he inherited it from his father. Then harihi k'stei achuza, and then it's like a stei achuza, and at Yovel it goes to the Kahanim. Hikdisha, but if he bought it and he was makdish it while it was still his father's, so then he was makdish it as a stei mikna. V'acha kach meis aviv, and then the father died. So at the time when he was makdish it as a stei mikna. It wasn't his. Another makdish davar she'eino shaloi. Then hari k'stei mikna. It's like a stei mikna. And at Yovel now it's going to return to him. Divrei Reb Meir. That's the opinion of Reb Meir. Reb Yehuda Reb Shimon says that even if he was makdish it before his father died, and then his father died, it's k'stei achuza. Why? Shenema v'im estei miknasai. If it's a purchased field, asher loy mistei achuzasai. Now that's totally superfluous. If it's stei mikna, obviously it's not ancestral field. But Reb Yehuda and Reb Shimon say, Sada she'ena ru'uya liyos stei achuza. It's not fit to ever be a stei achuza. Yotzezu, that excludes this case over here, where when he was makdashit, it was fit to become a stei achuza if his father died. She ru'uya liyos stei achuza. As we explained, stei mikna, if Yossi buys a field from Yaakov, the ancestral owner, ain't a yoitzel the kahana b'yovel. It doesn't go to the kahana b'yovel if Yossi dedicates it. She'ein other makdish davar she'ein shaloi. He can't be makdish what happens at yovel. That wasn't his. At yovel it goes back to Yaakov. Now, there's an interesting thing. Kahanim u'leviyim makdishim lo'ilam. Kahanim u'leviyim could be makdish their fields if they have money, and they have fields. They could be makdish their fields even on Yovel, even though normally you can't be makdish in the Yovel. V'gayalin la'olam, and they could always redeem it. Bein lifneim Yovel, bein la'achar Yovel. This is a unique din to Kahanim and Leviyim. It's based on a pasuk. The pasuk says, "Gulas olam tia lahem." They'll have a permanent geula always for them. Now, believe it or not, we're starting the 8th parak of Arachin. When all of Klal Yisrael are not Shri and Bad Masan, this is already from the time where the 2.5 Shvatim on the Transjordan were exiled, right? Ruvain, Gad, and Chatzi Shevet Menashe. So Hamakdish Sadeh B'Shosha Eino Yovel. If he's makdish his field at a time when there's no yovel, so now the formula of dedicating it for zera chaymer sa'orim does not apply. Oimrim loy psach atarishin. We tell him, you make the first bid. And the reason why we tell him you make the first bid is because we would rather him redeem it, because he has to add a fifth, a quarter really, which becomes a fifth. Shabalim noisnim chaymish, because the Baalim give a fifth. V'kol adam eina noisin chaymish. Now, here a person was makdish the field because it was a rotten, useless field. He was makdish the field because it was inferior. Amrulai, they tell him, and this the Rishonim say is they could demand from him, Psach atarishan, you give the first bid. Amar, he said, all right. Hariu shali be'isser, and isser is 8 prutas, which would mean that he would have to give 10 prutas, because 8 prutas, when you add the fifth, which is really a quarter, which is another 2 prutas, which would then become a fifth of the total. So Amar Rabbi Yaisi says, nah, he didn't offer an isser, he offered an egg. Sweet guy. He said, I'll give you an egg. He had a hard-boiled egg. So I'll give you an egg. An egg. Because you don't have to give cash. You could give shava kesef. So now the Gemara finishes off, according to the Tanakama. Amalei, nobody else came with a bid for this piece of rotten land. Higiyascha, it's yours. Nimsa mafsid iser. He went through the trouble of being makdashit. He lost an iser, v'sadeo lefanav, and the field is back to him. Now, what's the machlokes over here, whether it was an iser or an egg? It's very interesting. An egg is less than 4 prutas. Less than 4 prutas, you can't add a fifth, because a fifth would be less than a pruta, and less than a pruta doesn't count. And the question is, can you redeem something if you cannot add at least a pruta of a fifth? The Tanakhama says you can't, and Rabbi Yaisi says that you can.